And a very warm welcome to all of you watching us from wherever you are around the world. Welcome to Renault E-Ways, a unique event dedicated to electric mobility of today and tomorrow. An event that brings together the men and the women who are taking tangible actions to meet the challenges towards zero emissions. We're coming to you from Hangar Y, which is a fantastic industrial building in Meudon, just outside of Paris. It was here that the first electric Zeppelin flight flew in 1884. It's a very, very symbolic place for us here. And with me on stage today, I'm really happy to have you with us. Her name is Manuella Cunha Brito. You are co-founder of the Good Tech Lab. First of all, how are you doing?
Oh, great. Thank you. And thank you for having me here.
Yes. So as its name suggests, Manuella, Renault E-Ways aims to explore and open up to new ways of thinking, smart and positive mobility solutions, new ways of producing, and new techs, of course. And that is the name of our sequence today. It's Tech for Positive Impact. So first of all, Manuella, can you tell us what the Good Tech Lab actually is and what you do?
Sure. So Good Tech Lab is an innovation firm focused on technologies that will help us tackle the climate crisis and achieve the UN Sustainable Development Goals. For those who don't know, the UN SDGs are the 17 priorities that we must tackle by 2030, which include zero hunger, clean energy, clean water, and many other things like that. So we believe that technology is an important leverage point, and what we do with Good Tech Lab are mainly two activities. The first one is that we produce research and we advise companies and institutions in the role of technology for tackling those big global problems. The second one is that we support early stage founders to be successful in their climate tech ventures. And some exciting news is that early next year, my co-founder and I are launching new accelerator programs in partnership with Brazilian and French institutions.
So very, very exciting. We look forward to hearing more about that in the future. You're also the co-author of a book called The Frontiers of Impact Tech. It's a publication, from what I can gather, based on 450 interviews with innovators from 30 countries. That must have been quite a lot of work getting all that information together. Tell us a little bit about the book, first of all.
Yeah, it was a lot of work. Exciting, though. We had a chance to speak with lots of experts from all over the globe and understand their perspective on how technology could really be a leverage point to tackle big global problems. We spent 18 months conducting this research and reading also lots of papers. And we came up with 180 opportunities for technology to tackle the 17 global goals. And obviously with hundreds of examples of people who are already doing that.
Okay, so have a little look and have a read of the book. It's very, very interesting. There's a subtitle to the book, which is Moonshots Worth Taking in the 21st Century. Now, I've heard of long shots, but moonshots. What is a moonshot? What are you talking about?
Yeah, so we were very inspired by John Kennedy's moonshot speech in 1961, when he said that the US would send the men to the moon by the end of the decade. And moonshot became synonymous with this very ambitious goal, which seems almost impossible until it is done. Today, for our generation, a moonshot includes keeping the global warming below 2 degrees Celsius,
of course,
and bridging the inequality gap, or as the United Nations says, leaving no one behind. And actually, those two challenges are quite intertwined, because when you consider who are actually emitting most of CO2, generally the wealthier individuals and countries, and the ones that will be suffering the most are the most vulnerable and poor, even though many of them still lack access to basic resources like water, food, energy, mobility, and so on. Mm-hmm. But we believe that technology can actually help us improve the situation.
Maybe you can give us some examples of the moonshots, if you don't mind, so
yes.
Make it as clear as possible.
Sure. So the examples that get us excited are those that will allow us to really decarbonize entire sectors. For instance, when we think about food, you could think of regenerative agriculture practices, but also new types of proteins that are plant-based or even made out of carbon. Mm-hmm. Or you have for the energy sector, you know, long-term storage solutions that will allow us to balance the grid for renewable power. Or if you think about the built environment, low carbon concrete will be key to decarbonize this sector. And there are many more that we have mapped in our report already, a few hundreds. So I invite everyone who's interested to have a look at that as well. The report is freely available on the site.
You know where to go if you want to take a look at that, of course.
That's it.
So you believe the tech sector can help to tackle the world's biggest challenges and achieve sustainable development goals, including, for example, the goal number 13, which is reducing greenhouse gas emission by implementing zero carbon transportation by 2050. As far as mobility is concerned, because that's what we're talking about here this week, what are the biggest challenges for car manufacturers and for those that work in the industry?
Yeah, so transport actually represents about a quarter of all the greenhouse gases emissions. And most of that comes from road vehicles. So if you want to achieve the global climate goals, the industry will need to face a very important, decisive transformation over the next decades. There are probably some challenges that will come with that transition. I can think about 3.
Yeah.
The first one, for instance, is how do you actually scale up electrification?
Sure.
To be able to take out all the fossil fuel-based vehicles from the streets over the next years. And there are some countries that are in states that are already starting some policies to allow the trajectory to happen. In Norway, for instance, there is this new law that by 2025, all new vehicles sold must be zero emissions. The same is true for California in 2035, and here in France by 2040, all vehicles should be, the new ones should be zero emissions. That's super important, but if we are to achieve a zero emission transport system by 2050, that also means that we need to do that not only here in Europe or in the US, but we must be able to democratize electric vehicles all over the globe, including the global south. So Brazil, for instance, where I'm from, I know that some people still do not have access to electric vehicles because of the prices of batteries, of the costs.
Yeah, it's not affordable for them.
So we need to reduce the cost of batteries. We also need to have the charging infrastructure much more ubiquitous. And yeah, there's many challenges that are related to that still. But there is another challenge which is important for the industry maker, which is embracing the innovative business models that are allowed by the digitalization of transportation. If we think today, many of the vehicles that are on the streets are starting to be owned or managed by operating fleets. And when we think about urban mobility, it should be seamless, and for that to be easily accessible to everyone, we will probably need to embrace multimodal transportation systems that include having public transport and micro-mobility, electric bikes, mobility as a services, all integrated in a unique offer and service. And maybe you'll have in the future autonomous cars as well in the cities, and have that all, for some metropolis, autonomous, shared, and clean vehicles going around. But for now, I guess the third and key challenge that we need to tackle very fast is for the industry maker to really think about circular economy principles and how to integrate that entirely in their value chain and design waste out of the system.
Okay, so how can technology, let's speak, get into detail a bit. Now, how can the technology help automotive industry to meet the challenges towards zero emission? What technology are we actually talking about? Maybe you're talking about recycling technology, is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So we need better recycling technologies, better dismantling processes, better reverse logistics. And when you consider, for instance, the batteries and the materials that is out there, the value that you have in a used cell, it's higher than what you would find in raw ore. So not exploring that resource is not only very bad for an environment perspective, like creating harmful things, but it's also a waste. So we need to reverse this process. And when you think about batteries, again, another interesting issue is that you have still a lot of power, a lot of juice when you use the battery in a vehicle. So thinking about a second life for those batteries is super important. How you can actually apply them on stationary applications and give them, a second chance to be used and provide energy for our society. When you think about battery as well, but thinking now upstreams, the materials that are used to produce it, there are plenty of challenges there too.
Yeah.
Some of the minerals we know are extracted in very complex conditions. That's the case for the cobalt, for instance, where the critical mining labor situations are still to be solved.
In Africa, for example,
For instance, yes, especially in the Democratic Republic of Congo.
Yeah.
And how can we actually, improve this value chain, maybe with the help of technology, or find strategic alternatives to this mineral too? So both, downstream and upstream, there are definitely a lot of potential when we think about batteries, which are, by the way, one of the most expensive components in the EVs. So driving down the cost of batteries is key for electrification.
Yes, and key to gets to people, and it's more affordable. I get it.
Absolutely. And to get that, we will probably also need to improve the battery production process. That might mean different cell designs, assembly, different chemistries or materials used to produce them. And since I'm talking already about battery innovation, we should also think about the scaling of those battery producing. And that will mean having more efficient factories. More sustainable, hopefully. So what we want is that those factories are also powered by clean energy. And for that, I guess we have a lot of opportunities here in Europe as well to have new gigafactories rising and coming up to provide better solutions on that.
There's hydrogen as well, which is another subject. We've talked about it here already.
Yes, definitely. I think for long range or heavy-duty vehicles, hydrogen is key. And it's a very hot topic now with the green recovery. So it's important to think how we can actually have hydrogen produced in a more sustainable way and better electrolysis process that would actually be powered by clean energy and maybe connected with carbon capture and sequestration, so that the hydrogen produced in the fuel cells would be way more sustainable than what we have today. So there are definitely a lot of potential for innovation in there. And maybe I'll think about still yet another area where innovation would be very relevant. It's on the connection between the vehicle to the grid, the V2G technology.
Yes, yes.
That can help us reduce the peak of energy that will demand for charging an EV, and also balancing the grid by connecting the vehicle, as part of the system. So having smarter and bidirectional charges will be key for that to happen, and it's definitely an area where innovation is needed.
Great. In your book, you talk about the tension between different impact tech strategies. One of the tension points is between innovation and replication. What do you mean by tension points?
Yeah, so this is a common friction point that you have in climate debates about what are the new solutions that we need to achieving the Paris Agreement and remaining below the 2 degrees Celsius of temperature rise. There are usually two viewpoints. One which states that we already have all the solutions that we need and we just need to deploy them at scale. And other people who would defend that you need to invest massively, exclusively on innovation. Obviously, the answer would lie in between.
You need to do both, right?
Yeah, we need to do both. Climate change needs to be urgently addressed, and for that, we need to scale proven solutions. But there are many areas for which breakthrough innovations and innovative business models will be super helpful to decarbonize sectors. Some of them I already mentioned before. So there is a case for both innovation and replication. And maybe to make a connection with the exactly, to the mobility industry, electric vehicles are definitely a proven solution already, which we need to scale a lot. But and by the way, that's been happening. If we consider 10 years ago, we used to have 70,000 vehicles on the streets. We're now 7 million. Over 7 million vehicles on streets. So there's definitely a proven solution there. At the same time, we still need some innovation in some of the sectors that I mentioned before, from fuel cells to better batteries and so on. So there is a case for both. And it also means that we'll need to have financing models to
funding.
Exactly, to support those, the entire innovation spectrum from public R&D funding or philanthropy to venture equity, venture capital, to project finance and subsidies that would actually help those solutions to really scale to the market.
I'd like to end our conversation with a quote. It's a quote which is the preface of your book from a visionary futurist, an American architect called Richard Buckminster Fuller. He said, "We are all astronauts on a little spaceship called Earth." Why did you choose to put this quote in your book?
Yeah, I love this quote very much, not only because it goes very well with our metaphor and narrative of, finding the moonshots that are worth taking for the 21st century, but also because it brings back to everyone the responsibility of a healthy planet. Like, we are all astronauts in the spaceship called Earth.
And for mobility as well?
Yeah, for sure. To come back to the concept, like 50 years ago, we had the Apollo 11 mission that brought the man to the moon. Yeah. We now know that we need moonshots, which are different and more ambitions even that we need before. Mm-hmm. In this time, no superpower can actually achieve that alone, right? Mm-hmm. So for the mobility sector, that would mean that to achieve a zero carbon mobility by 2050, all the industry should come together, that organizations should join coalitions with multiple stakeholders, including sector peers, to really make this transformation happen, have more electric vehicles in the market, have better policies, because innovation alone will not be sufficient. We have the need also for consumer change. And
we need to change our point of view as well.
Absolutely. Maybe on a final note for the consumer behavior, I would say we're all responsible for the planet that we live in, and what are the conditions going to be for the next years. So if you're thinking regarding the mobility sector, for instance, about buying a new car, why not choosing for a more sustainable and conscious option whenever you have this choice?
I have an electric car, yes.
For instance, if you're going to buy a new car, buy an electric one. And I've heard there are some beautiful and exciting news options coming to the market right now.
That's right. Very good news as well. Well, thanks for this great discussion, Manuella. Lots of great things for the future and for all the research and the acceleration projects that you've got going as well with the Good Tech Lab. So if you want more details, obviously, and you need more details about the subject, go on our website, of course. The address is eways.group.renault.com, eways.group.renault.com. Thanks so much again
for this
discussion. Goodbye.